So McGregor's going to Dublin, and so is Michael Chandler, because they are going to have a press conference in a few days, June 3rd. We also have a massive fight announcement. UFC 303 has been saved, not by Colby Covington, the guy that should be cut from the UFC, but by MVP. He is going to be fighting Ian Garry. We now have 3 big fights on the main card. A new one as well, Jamahal Hill and Carlos Ulberg. Ulberg is filling in for Khalil Roundtree, who popped for a substance. I'm back. I've been away for a few days. It's time to get back to business, okay? First off, let's talk about this press conference with McGregor and Michael Chandler. I think it's going to be great, and I think they are going to be shitting all over Michael Chandler. I think Chandler's going to be there smiling and waving and smiling and waving, and he's going to be the brown nose that he is. I think it's going to be humiliating for Michael Chandler. Now, we'll talk about who I think is going to win in a second, but either way, it's going to be a humiliating experience for Michael Chandler. Not only is he not a trash talker, not only is he's not very quick-witty. Chandler's the type of guy that needs to memorize a motivational speech and read a bunch of quotes. You know, Chandler's the type of guy where he speaks in quotes that you would find at the Christmas tree store that, you know, your grandma would put up on her wall or some shit like that. Just corny-ass quotes. Life would be better with a piece of pie, some shit like that. Chandler's going to be out here saying life would be better with a piece of pie, and Conor McGregor and his freaking crowd of 20,000 screaming Irishmen with tomato red faces are all going to be shitting all over him. And, you know, Chandler, he's going to say, you guys mistake my kindness for weakness and all this stuff. And McGregor's going to be saying, I mistake your fucking kindness for whatever the heck. McGregor's going to absolutely mop the floor with him at this press conference. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be interesting. McGregor's been saying he's going to reel in the trash talk. No way is he going to reel in the trash talk. He's going to treat Michael Chandler like a golf caddy. All right, he's going to treat him like a butler, which is basically what Chandler is in this fight. He's basically being hired as a butler, you know, a dancing monkey for McGregor, but he is probably going to finish him. He's probably going to KO him. Either way, it's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting. I'm going to be reacting to it live. I just hope, I really do hope that the reporters, if you guys are watching this, please, I ask you, ask entertaining questions. We don't want to hear about the new Ford Stout that McGregor has. We don't want Oscar Willis. I know you're going to be there. We don't want you to ask about his new investment in BKFC. Hey, Conor, we've got 20,000 screaming Irishmen ready to applaud. Just Conor, tell us what's it like to now be partnered with BKFC. Fuck that! Fuck that! I don't want that shit. Ask him about fucking Chandler's sloppy style on the feet. Ask him about Chandler brown-nosing his way into this fight and being desperate for your attention. Please, reporters. No asking questions like we're at a water cooler. No rubbing shoulders and looking at each other in the eye. I just want you to notice me. I just want you to notice that I'm here. No. You're going to fly out to Dublin, and you've got a whole plane ride. You've got a whole couple of weeks before the plane ride to think about questions to ask. Make sure that these questions are about each other's skill sets, both fighters' skill sets, about both fighters' mentality. Get under their skin a little bit, right? Ask the crowd, hey, Dublin, how many of you guys think McGregor's knocking this man? You know what I'm saying? Knocking this dude out. That's what you got to do. 20,000 screaming Irishmen are going to go crazy. You have the ability to make this a memorable press conference, and you also have the ability to kill it in its tracks. Dana White, do not allow them to ruin the press conference. Please do not. I've suggested ways to fix this. I've suggested having trap doors underneath these guys like it's Austin Powers, where they ask a bad question, you press the button and they're in an alligator pit. Whatever it takes, make sure they're asking good questions. They are starting to become a liability at these press conferences. We can't have none of that. Okay? We can't have none of that. I want McGregor acting like the fat cat of the UFC, and I want some of these reporters to be willing to ask him the hard questions. Don't be afraid if you get booed. Ask him the hard questions. Say, hey, you've not won a fight, a legit fight since 2016. The Cowboy fight, we all know he shit his pants, and this is a real opponent. This guy's dangerous, and he's in there to win. You know, What's it like to be, I don't know, just ask something like that. Enough bullshit, please, reporters. Do not mess this one up because they really have the ability to mess this one up. But I have faith. I have faith that they are going to ask decent questions. Oscar Willis, I know he sat down with McGregor and he brown-nosed him for 10 minutes, buttered him up, and I get it. You gotta kind of make sure McGregor's not gonna punch you in the face doing an interview with him, but I don't want to hear about his forged stout, and I don't want to hear about the foam at the top of his drink and how foamy and frothy it is. Like, we don't give a fuck, okay? We don't give a fuck. And we care about BKFC, and I like BKFC, but I don't need to hear McGregor talk about it for 10 minutes, about how great he feels to be making good money with BKFC. Okay, enough. Don't ruin it, please. And I'm not only talking about Oscar Willis. I'm just talking about all the reporters. Cinnamon Paulo, I don't know if you're going to be making the trip, but if you do, I know he's going to ask a good question. But all the reporters, please, Mr. Quivers, if you're out there, make this one count. Make this one count. And let's talk about Ian Garry. Oh, also my prediction for this fight. You just can't pick Conor. Listen, if you're picking Conor McGregor, you're picking a fairy tale book ending. All right? It's not going to go down like that. He might be able to pull it off via fluke. Chandler, we know that he has no fight IQ. He could go out there and just drool his way to a KO loss, but I think that it is most likely that, think about it like this. Fighters that are coming off of long layoffs due to an injury, they usually come back to a loss. Jamahal Hill, Yuri Prochazka, we can go on the list. They usually come back to a L. Conor McGregor's coming off of the longest layoff. He's coming off of the most horrific injury, the worst one. And he's also McGregor, where he's loaded. He's not been hungry for years. He's partying. He's not very disciplined. And he's sparring people that look like they've been training for 6 months that are half his size. So I think Conor can win because Chandler does make a lot of mistakes. But I have to pick Chandler because of all these things that are surrounding McGregor. Either way, Ian Garry versus MVP, let's talk about this. I think it's a much better, it could be boring. I was going to say it might be a better matchup than Garry versus Colby, but I actually think because of how much heat there would be on that matchup, because Colby would go hard in the buildup with the trash talk and Garry would really want to take it to him and whoop his ass and all that. This is going to be a respectful buildup. And there's a chance it's a bit of a boring point fight because sometimes Ian Garry, I think that if he's in there with people that are dangerous because he's been dropped a few times in his career, he tends to be pretty reserved. Either way, it's a great matchup. And I think that UFC 303, that International Fight Week card that people have been talking about as underwhelming, and usually the McGregor cards are a little bit underwhelming because they can get away with that because McGregor's going to sell 1 million pay-per-views no matter who's on the undercard. They've had Holly Holm as a co-main event to McGregor before. This has Jamahal Hill versus Carlos Ulberg, Ian Garry versus MVP. You've got Peyton Talbot, the real Sean O'Malley, who's also going to be on the prelims. And you've got Joe Pyfer, who, of course, always brings in the Philly fan base. And, he's going to be in there doing what Pyfer usually does, saying what Pyfer usually says. And I think that this is a really solid card. It's a good International Fight Week. I think that this is the most dangerous fight for Ian Garry on the feet. I think this is more dangerous than Jeff Neal, all right? Not only does MVP have the same range ability, the same sort of height, the same reach, but I actually think he's faster than Ian Garry. And unlike Jeff Neal, again, he's not just a headhunter. He will kick. And also, again, when it comes to the reach, when it comes to the height, very similar. And if there's anyone that's going to be tricky, sneaky, that's going to be able to land a shot that you don't see and catch you off guard with speed, it's going to be a guy like Michael Venom Page. And I was really impressed with his ability to destroy Kevin Holland and make him look like a fool on the feet, right? The speed that MVP has is insane. But I think that Ian Garry's chin is not as bad as we've said it was, right? He did eat some punches from Jeff Neal. Didn't get rocked at all in that fight, even though he didn't really leave himself open to getting rocked. But he was still closing the distance. He was crashing forward on Jeff Neal, stepping in with knees, landing punches off with the knees. He was putting himself in danger at times. And he took a couple of punches, didn't get phased. I know he can get slept in this fight, but it's usually going to be the straight punches that MVP can catch you with that are going to be the most dangerous one. And it's usually the hooks that give Ian Garry issues, or the counter hooks. Either way, it's a dangerous fight, but I think Ian Garry's chin is a little bit better than most people say it is, even though he's got that pea head, very small head, kind of shaped like a bit of a snow pea. And he's on the vegan diet. He is deteriorating before our eyes. He is getting smaller from fight to fight. That's why in his last outing, he was 180 pounds in the cage, which is even lighter than Colby Covington in the cage when he fights at welterweight. And everyone talks about how Colby's the lightest guy. Ian Garry is going to be like 179 in the cage. And I don't know how much MVP is going to weigh. He's not a big welterweight, but it's going to be a dangerous fight for Ian Garry. But I think he's going to win. I do think Gary's going to win. I think he's going to be able to pull off the performance that I thought Kevin Holland was capable of pulling off. And I picked Kevin Holland because I was saying he's got output, he's got range. If he can stay at range with a guy like MVP and just chop low kicks over and over and over again, and teeps to the body and stick behind straight punches, I think he can do pretty well. He didn't. And Kevin Holland was out there throwing goofy goober, big winging hooks, stuff like that. And he's a little bit slow, and he's not as fast as Ian Garry. He's not as crisp as Ian Garry. His distance management isn't the same. His leg kicks aren't as powerful. Ian Garry's got really powerful low kicks. We've seen him take Neil Magny off of his feet. And he's got really excellent front kicks up the middle. Good front kicks to the body. They're really fast as well. He's got an amazing jab. So I think that the straight shots and the low kicks of Ian Garry and the output and the volume that he's got, he doesn't get tired when he's striking on the feet. I think that as long as he doesn't get KO'd and dropped multiple times in this fight, I think he wins this fight. Do I think he's going to put away MVP? I don't. I don't think Gary's going to knock him out because I don't think Gary's got crazy power in his hands, and I don't see Garry really looking for the finish that much. But I do think that he will be able to hurt the legs of Michael Venom Page, who has these twig legs. And I also think he'll be able to outpoint him throughout the majority of this fight. Probably the fastest guy MVP's ever fought as well. So I'm going to go with Ian Garry by decision. Now let's get on to the latest fight from Jamahal Hill. But let's get on to the other fight on UFC 303, which is going to be a banger. Jamahal Hill versus Carlos Ulberg. I actually think this is a better fight than the Khalil Roundtree fight. Not because Roundtree isn't exciting, but because I think that stylistically, Carlos Ulberg is a tougher matchup for Jamahal Hill than Khalil Roundtree. Khalil's dangerous, but he's been inconsistent throughout his career. He is a lot shorter than Jamahal Hill. He has a significant reach disadvantage compared to Jamahal Hill. Whereas Carlos Ulberg is tall. He's like 6'3", 6'4", about the same height as Jamahal Hill. He's got a long reach. He's a little bit more technically sound. He throws with higher output. And he's got one of the best left hooks in the upper weight classes. He's probably got the second best left hook in his division, right behind Alex Pereira. He's slept a lot of people with that. He's coming off of a KO win with an early left hook KO. He's on a mean streak. Fair enough, he had a pretty underwhelming performance about a year ago where he won by submission and things were pretty close, but Jamahal Hill leaves himself open to left hooks. That's why I picked against him going into his fight with Alex Pereira, and I don't think Carlos Ulberg is as good or as powerful as Alex Pereira at all. I'm just saying his weakness is leaving his hands down and exposing himself to left hooks. I made a whole video about it where he's getting caught with big shots from Glover Teixeira and other fighters, and he's leaving himself open against people that aren't able to capitalize. But if you think about the people that Jamahal Hill's fought, most of them weren't great strikers. Glover Teixeira, he's a decent boxer, but at that point in his career, he was not known for having crisp striking, right? He beat OSP, not really on Ulberg's level, not nearly as dangerous. Ulberg is a fast guy that can make you pay with the left hook. And Jamahal Hill's KO loss, which was what, a month and a half ago? He's going to fight in another month. That's like 2.5 months off. I was sort of worried going into the Roundtree fight. But again, Jamahal has the reach advantage. He has the range advantage, the height advantage. And Khalil Roundtree doesn't just KO as many people as some of the hardcore fans like to think. He's had a lot of underwhelming performances where he's not KO'd people that aren't anywhere near as powerful as Jamahal Hill. Ulberg's left hook is an issue for Jamahal Hill stylistically. He always leaves his hands down. And because he got KO'd recently, I think I might pick Carlos Ulberg to win this fight. It's a big jump up in competition. Stylistically, I think it's a bit trickier than Roundtree. And I think I'm going to change my pick to the guy that Jamahal Hill's fighting this time. So I think Ulberg's going to beat him. I think Ulberg might knock him out. I really do. I think Jamahal Hill, not as powerful as people make him out to be. He is powerful, but he doesn't have the one-shot KO power like people think he has. And I think Ulberg actually does have that. It's going to be tricky for Ulberg to KO a guy like Hill. But again, Hill sort of has that weakness in his game that will present an opening. So I actually think Ulberg beats him. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. I love these two new fights that are going to be on UFC 303. I think the card is actually solid now, and I'm looking forward to the press conference. Let's hope that the reporters don't ruin it.